Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, that is Tim. We talk about horror movies on this show, and on this episode, we are actually back to a horror franchise. Again, much like a few of the other ones we've done this month, we've done quite a few number twos this month.
A franchise.
That was atrocious, Tim. Atrocious. So, one of the movies we did last month was the original Phantasm, and because we did the original, we have to do the sequels, so we're going to sort of, again, do one a month, give or take, until we've done all of them. And I've not even seen the fifth one before, so the fifth one will be new to me when we get there. But this is going to be number two. This is going to be Phantasm 2, which came out in 1988, 9 years after the original. And it is a little bit different in the sense that this was actually somewhat funded by Universal, so it's actually the biggest budget, I believe, of all the movies in the series.
Makes sense.
And I believe that's partly why we've got a different actor playing Mike, because Universal wanted a more mainstream, hunky-looking person who I've never heard of course. He never went anywhere, did anything important with his career, at least as far as I know. I'm going to click on him. Let's find out. If he ever amounted to anything after Phantasm 2. He's been in movie or in stuff recently.
Oh,
Can't say that. He was in a few episodes of Person of Interest. He was in.
Hey, there you go.
He's in movies recently. He's in an episode of Fear the Walking Dead. So he's had a career.
He sounds like a fine young man.
Never been a star, but he's had a career. He's still working to this day regularly. So you know what? Fair play to him. Fair play.
Mm-hmm.
Fair play indeed. So, yeah, anyway, so Phantasm 2. So we'll start spoiler free, and we will give you a warning before we go into spoilers somewhere in the middle, as we usually do. So, yeah, so what is Phantasm 2? Phantasm 2 takes place, there's a little scene at the start explaining the ending of Phantasm 1 that kind of immediately follows on to it to explain it. But the bulk of the movie is years later, where we're older. Mike's who was 13, 14 the first movie. Mm-hmm. He's now supposedly 19. He says that at one point. He looks 25, but okay, 19. We'll go with that. And he is determined. He gets out of the psychiatric hospital, and he's determined to hunt down the tall man and kill him for what he did to his brother and everything else. Reggie doesn't believe him, but then Reggie's family's murdered. Again, this is not a spoiler. This is the opening of the movie, and he agrees, so they go on a hunt. They go on a road trip trying to hunt down the tall man. Meanwhile, there's another character named Liz who has some seemingly psychic connection with Mike. They seem to be aware of each other, even though they've never met. And she's worried that the tall man's going to be coming for her. And she's kind of the one who has more of the direct plot with the tall man. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the characters eventually intersect, and things go down, things happen. That's a really weird way of describing a movie. Things happen, but that's kind of all I want to say without spoilers. So road trip, try to hunt down the tall man, psychic connection with this girl named Liz, and shenanigans ensue. So we've seen this before, of course, but I'm going to ask Tim the question. Tim, do you like Phantasm 2?
Oh baby, yes I do. I'd proudly call myself a fan with a PH, as Phantasm fans sometimes refer to themselves. If you remember on the episode for the first movie, I think I might have given it a perfect 10. I don't remember, but
I think it sounds
did.
I feel
sounds
like
something I would do.
It sounds like something you would do.
I like this movie a lot. I think it's a good sequel. It's I think it's a little different than the first one. There's parts of I feel like it gets a little bit away from the stuff that I really liked about the first one, which is I feel like it's a little less weird and surreal and dreamlike, and like a little more actiony, which isn't necessarily like a bad thing. Like, it works in the movie. But it does lose some of the qualities that makes the first one like one of my all-time favorite horror movies.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is. It's a little bit watered down in the sense it doesn't have the same creepy atmosphere, partly because it doesn't have the more dreamy elements, even though it does use some of them to an extent further down the line. But basically, I enjoy it as well. I quite like it. I remember liking it a lot from the first time I saw it. I will say I do have a few more criticisms watching it again now. It's not a perfect movie. There are definitely things we can point to and critique, and
Yes.
things that we can kind of pick apart a little bit. But I do quite like it a lot. I think I said in the first movie review that this was kind of like Phantasms to Phantasm, kind of like how Aliens was the action movie
Sure,
after
yeah,
Alien.
yeah.
This is kind of the action Phantasm movie after the first one. It's not quite as successful. Whereas I think Aliens, a lot of people will basically. Some people argue which one's better or not. Personally, though, I'm just kind of a opinion that both Alien and Aliens are both tens, and it's just preference, whatever one you happen to like a little bit more. But they're both kind of masterpieces of what they are. Phantasm and Phantasm 2 is not quite the same thing. Phantasm 1 is the better movie. Phantasm 2 is a solid movie that has the same kind of thing, though, where it's an action movie. It's the action kind of,
Yeah.
we're going to build a quadruple barreled shotgun and fire it at the at the the little druids, like, and things like that.
Yeah.
We're going to do that kind of thing. So there's that. To critique it though, to sort of, and this is mostly spoiler free stuff. My critiques. It has a really weird pace and it has a really weird structure. I think the first half of the movie is kind of muddy in terms of its drive. Like, once the characters kind of get together and it kind of like sort of sets up the end game, it's like really clear what it's doing. It's a lot of fun. It's doing what it is. The first half though, where it's kind of them in the road trip and it's kind of bouncing around all these different things, it's a little bit, I don't know, scattershot. It feels like it's not focused, I guess.
Meanders a little bit.
Yeah, just a touch. And I feel like just a couple of rewrites would have helped this though. Like, it just had to reorganize it a little bit and just sort of nail down the sequence of events. As it is, I actually find it very hard to remember the sequences of like events in the first half of the movie. They all kind of blur together into this big mesh of stuff that happens.
Yeah, I think you have kind of the opening scene, which it almost reminds me of like Evil Dead 2 or something a little bit, in that it kind of seems like it rewrites the first movie, and
Well, except the fact that the first movie actually already did that itself at the end of the first movie.
True, yeah.
So this just kind of follows on from what the first movie already rewrote. But
That's
hey,
fair, yeah.
whatever.
But yeah, like so they kind of have like this big opening scene to kind of get the characters, like, oh, okay, this is where they've been and stuff. And then yeah, it feels like there's a gap between kind of setting the characters up and to that point where they kind of have their clear mission and everyone meets up and is together and knows what they're doing. And
I'd say when it starts to find its footing properly is when they find alchemy, and then they go to like her like town, and then go to her, like the derelict B&B that her uncle used to own. That's kind of where it starts to kind of find its footing, where I have like a base of what the movie is and what it's doing. Before that though, it's jumping around so much from them, like just checking out random places that the tall man might have been, and just what creepy stuff went on there, to like following Lizzie's plot with her grandparents and what's going on with that. Like, it's kind of bouncing around, and then the priest who's kind of working with the tall man,
oh yeah,
doesn't like him and knows that he's evil, and so you got all these things that it's jumping around, and it's a little bit muddy in the first half. It's definitely not as tight a movie as the first one is. It's still a lot of fun though. I still think the second half is like so worth it because it's so much fun when it gets going.
Yeah, like once they're really in it, I think there's a lot of fun gore and kills, and then that's kind of when you start getting like the weird trippy stuff that really like stood out and that I liked about the first movie.
Some goofy elements, some stuff like that, and just all that stuff. I mean, obviously, I enjoy the scene early on where they go to the hardware store and basically stock up on weapons. Sure, that's fun. That's when they build the quadruple barrel shotgun.
Yeah, which I feel like that's kind of the big thing everyone remembers from this series, but I forget they get a lot of mileage out of that, like kind of homemade flamethrower.
They do, yeah.
Yeah, don't want to discount that. It's a pretty cool weapon as well.
Yeah, two things are built in that scene, yeah. I do want to point out, though, that towards the end of the movie, Reggie throws the quadruple barrel shotgun away.
Reggie.
He throws it away, and yet he has it in all the movies after this. I've not seen 5, but I'm pretty sure I saw him in the poster with that quadruple barrel shotgun. He's still got the bloody thing.
So, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's there.
So just playing a bit with its continuity, but then again, the first movie already did that within itself, so why not?
I mean, I think it's funny that you're latching onto that when I think there's a much bigger like thing at the end that obviously gets rewritten in later movies.
To be fair, spoiler-free section, Tim.
I know. I'm just saying.
Just that's all. That's all I'm saying. So, yeah, obviously, Tall Man's still great. Angus Scrimm.
Oh, yeah.
He's creepy. In fact,
he has one line in here that I was like, God damn, this has to be like maybe like top 10
I wonder
movie lines.
if it's the same line that I'm thinking of, because most people think of boy when you think of Tall Man, but the line I actually think of is from this movie. It's actually when Liz is snooping about the mausoleum, and she's up at one of the coffins with her grandfather, and his hand comes on her shoulder, and he just goes, "The graveside service is about to begin." That's the first thing I think of when I think of the Tall Man, is that line.
That's really good. The line I was thinking of, which I mean, again, maybe it's not as like as suitable for like like a quick catchphrase or whatever.
Could you pass the coffee, please? Was it
that? When he says, I think it's the priest he's talking to, but I have a horrible memory. But the tall man says, you think when you die you go to heaven, you come to us.
This is not a bad line, yeah.
That's a fucking great line.
You come to us. Yeah.
I can't sell it with the gravitas of the tall man. But
of course not. No,
that's really, really good.
No, obviously the balls are back. There's even a new ball. Yeah. There's a gold ball in addition to the silver balls. So some solid ball action. If you're here for that.
Yeah, and like a good sequel does, you got them, and they got like the classic mode, but they got like a some new tricks up their sleeves, which is fun.
Yeah, some fun stuff to be had there. So I think we'll give the spoiler warning, and we can talk a bit more freely about plot and whatnot. So that's good. Actually, this first time we're going to talk about it's not spoiler, but we're in spoiler mode now anyway, just because so we don't have to do it again. But spoilers. I want to talk about the music, because obviously we love the score and the theme from the first movie.
So good.
I love that this movie takes that theme and does lots of new versions of it. Like, it does one that's more orchestral, it does one that's still creepy but has a different sound to it, does one that's a bit more emotional sounding. Like, it really plays with the main theme and everything you do with it. I like that.
Yeah, I think it's good in this movie. It doesn't sound as good as the first one, in my opinion.
That's fair.
But I think maybe it works better in the first one, because the first one is a lot more dreamlike and eerie. So the music kind of suits it a little better. And the music here doesn't sound like as dreamy, but I guess it works better for the story, which isn't conveying that as much.
It's a bit more action theme kind of thing. It's a bit more heroic sounding almost at times, which is an interesting. I think that's why I like it so much. I love when they take a main theme but give it a different emotion. Like, so in this scene it's like a really sad theme, but in this scene it's a really rousing, like, successful theme. I like when they do that. Like, it works really well. I like the one example I can think of just recently is like on the Flash TV show. His like theme, like, there's a sad version that plays when he's really upset, but there's a really heroic version that plays when he's. But it's the same two notes. It's just dressed up differently, depending. Or the sad version's on a piano, whereas the non-sad version's on a big brassy trombone or something like that. So
that's cool.
That kind of idea. So I like that. But anyway, so the opening scene, which kind of continues on from the first movie. The first thing I know, because it actually shows you footage, because it's actually the Liz like who's psychically like talking about how the first movie ended, because she like kind of knows about it, just because psychic. She's like, you see the scenes from the end of the first one where Reggie's talking to Mike and he's explaining how your brother died in a car crash, and you see Mike go upstairs and he gets grabbed, and there's a couple of new little bits that are inserted of the tall man getting out of his hearse to come up and get him. And then we get new footage where, when Mike screams, we see Reggie like put his guitar down and run up the stairs, and I immediately noticed how different the room looked, because obviously it's like almost a decade later. So they've obviously had to either, the house has been decorated, or it's a different house, or it's a different set, and they've rebuilt it. The stairs as well, I could be wrong, but I swear in the first movie the stairs were not curvy. Like, they were a straight set of stairs. Whereas in in the sequel at the start when he runs up the stairs, they're spiral stairs almost. They
Yeah.
have a turn in them.
Yeah, I'd have to watch them back to back. I'm not sure.
And the only reason why I think I remember that is because it's the scene from the first one when they've got the bat-like thing in the jacket, and he's running down the stairs with it. That's why I think I remember it, that the stairs were different. But I mean, it's not a huge deal. I'm just pointing out the continuity error because I noticed it. But yeah, so obviously Mike, the actor who plays Mike, is now like 20, or more than that even, like 22, 23, and he's not in this movie, outside of the archive footage. But what's really funny is, in the rest of this new footage, like, he's been dragged along the floor by like these druids and stuff, but you never see his face. It's always, they've got like a body double, and you can never see his face because obviously it's been years and the kid's not that age anymore.
They don't. Yeah, they don't want you to, like, probably trying to like separate the original actor from this new guy.
Yeah,
as much as possible.
And then so Reggie ends up fighting off the druids, turning off on the gas so the house explodes, and jumping out the window upstairs with Mike to save his life. Which does lead to a cool moment of like the tall man like turning around at the hearse and looking back at the explosion. It's a really iconic looking shot.
Yeah,
but it's that's just kind of okay. So that's what happened, and then when we cut later, we find out Reggie's like suppressed all this. Oh no, man, that was all a dream, man. Like, you got a few screws loose and stuff. Like, he's just sort of doubting all until, of course, his house explodes with his entire family inside it. And he's like, okay, I believe the tall man exists. Let's go hunt the bastard.
Yeah. So, and you're skipping over. The fact that we find out that Mike is in a psych ward now, basically. Yeah. But like, it kind of sucks. Like, this is the go-to for like, I feel like every horror sequel, like, you always find out the guy or the girl from the first movie has ended up in like a psych ward, which I mean, it makes sense if you go through all that stuff, but it's always a bummer. I just want him to live happily ever after, but he basically lies to get out.
The big thing though is that he does have this psychic connection to Liz, and they're talking to each other almost. They can sense each other, and they're telling each other about what they have to do and to fight the tall man. So like throughout the movie, he's telling Reggie, he's like, "Hey, we need to find Liz. Liz is important, and she's going to help us fight the tall man." And Reggie's like, she's just a wet dream, man. Come on now. But like that's kind of the thing. So they go stock up. They break out of the hardware store, get all their weapons. Reggie's all for the rifle, and he's like, no, it has to work at short range. And he's like, okay, so quadruple barrel shotgun. I like the moment before he does it though. Before we get the little montage of him like cutting the guns and putting them together. I like the little moment where he decides he holds up a shotgun. Then another one comes up into frame, and he's looking at both of them going, wait just a minute.
It's something I never really noticed that as a specific thing that I like in horror movies, but as we're kind of watching these, I'm noticing it more and more in the movies that I really, really like. But I love this very do it yourself approach to like traps and weaponry. Like we kind of talked about it in Nightmare on Elm Street, like towards the end when she starts making all those traps in the house. And
I think it's and You're Next, of course, as well as another big one. I think it's an extension of liking your characters to be proactive. I think that's what makes this movie so exciting. I mean, to be fair, the first movie they were fairly proactive anyway, but it's like, no, we're going to hunt this bastard. Like, no, the first movie was him was ahead of the game on us. We're going to come after him this time. We're going to be the hunters. And I think that's a really interesting idea.
And,
it makes you root for them. It makes them feel like they're the one driving the plot, and that's a big thing. I think you can have your characters be reactive to a point, and in horror movies they often are reactive because it's all about the scary man jumps out and you just kind of react to it. But that moment when the character says, "No, I'm going to turn around and fight," that's the moment where you're like, "Yeah, let's do this."
Yeah, it's kind of like the differences between playing like a survival horror game where you're very cautious and you're afraid, something's going to jump out at you or whatever, versus playing like, an action game where you're just like, I'm going to stock up on weapons and just like start tearing people new assholes. It's like two different modes, but both equally fun.
I mean, I do that in survival horror games. I always stockpile and go into boss fights like oversupplied.
I'm a very, very cautious player. Like, I'm playing Resident Evil 7 right now, and I'm like so because I get like afraid of not having enough ammo or health stuff or running out and being screwed. So I play very cautiously and slowly. It's very spooky.
But you're still fighting through it. That makes you proactive anyway, and that's what makes you endearing to, well, the audience or me, yeah, me. So no, so they check out some of the places that the tall man might have been, see some creepy shit, including they see like a fake version of Liz, where this like almost Freddy Krueger-esque thing like comes out of her back and is like, "I can sense you, boy," and like kind of thing.
I love that it had like a weird, I don't know, I guess kind of like a high pitched voice, but you can tell it was still like it still sounded like the tall man.
Yeah. So the first half of the movie basically sums up. So they're looking around, they find a couple of weird things. The priest is trying to look into what's going on and stop the tall man. And Lizzie's grandfather dies, but his grandfather, of course, has been taken by the tall man and the druids, and she's investigating that. The priest gets killed by one of the balls. He gets the ball to the head. Well, I guess his ear cut off first. The ear goes first. I don't know why the ball cuts off his ear first. There's like no reason for it. But whatever, it's a fun little moment, so I'm not going to complain.
Yeah. So it has kind of I'm pretty sure we didn't see this in the first movie. I think the first movie, it only really had like the straight blades, but now it has this kind of like almost like a pizza cutter, like chainsaw kind of function to it.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
It uses that first to cut off his ear, and then it does the classic thing with the spikes and the drill, if you will.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I continue. I'm just going to let the cat in, who's crying.
Oh, okay. But no, that was pretty good. And the I guess similar to the first movie, the special effects and the gore in this are pretty good. I mean, it's the 80s, so there's still like a little bit of cheesiness to it, but just seeing it slice his ear off and then seeing this kind of like hunk of meat flying through the air, it looked pretty cool.
It's pretty funny. Did you catch the little Sam Raimi Easter egg at one point?
Ooh, I don't think so.
Well, you'd know for sure because it literally said Sam Raimi on something.
Oh, like on a tombstone or something?
No, it wasn't
like
a tombstone. It was you know how there's like the creepy guy who's like, he's in the crematorium and he's burning all the bodies. Mm-hmm. At one point you see him like shoveling the ashes into like bags with addresses on them, and one of them says "Deliver to Sam Raimi."
Oh, that's awesome! I didn't notice that.
Yeah, I cracked up. I don't think I noticed that before. And I was giggling to myself as I was watching it.
Very cool.
But yeah, so she runs into the guys, and they by this point they've ran to this hitchhiker girl,
Alchemy,
Kimmy for short.
Kimmy.
Yeah, it's a very creative way of shortening Alchemy, I have to say. Which is a cool name for a chick, actually. Alchemy. That's a really good name.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It also reminds me of one of the Castlevania games for PS2 had a big alchemy element to the gameplay, and there's like this one character that you buy stuff from, or like would forge weapons with, kind of like the dude from Resident Evil 4. But
what are you buying? I'll buy it at a high price. Thank you. What are you selling?
Yeah, basically that guy, only like with alchemy, and he would like use alchemy every other word. That's pretty much the only thing I remember from that game.
I'm sorry, Tim, but you can't bring up the merchant from Resident Evil 4 and not get my impression. That's just not happening.
Oh no, I was hoping for it.
Not enough cash, stranger. So they've picked up Alchemy, who, of course, Mike has the little like premonition moment where he sees her being dead, and he's a little bit worried about it, which does pay off. It pays off at the very end of the movie, that the entire time she's actually been the tall man. Kind of like in the first movie, he would, pretend to... Because I was actually, not this time, but the first time I watched it, I remember thinking about two-thirds. It's like, it's kind of weird they've not done anything with the tall man appearing as someone else this movie, because he did that a lot in the first one. And then it turns out at the very end that it's been her the whole time, which is a really nice touch. But they meet up with her, they go to her bed and breakfast in this derelict town. And you get the idea it's derelict because tall man keeps like stealing everyone and making them slaves for his other planet or other dimension. And so the guys run into Liz, they go back to the base, they have their sweet moments together. I like how when Mike and Liz first meet, they immediately just kiss. Like they know each other so well from this psychic connection, which, is a new thing for the second movie for the most part, but whatever, it works. It's fine.
Yeah, it's Mike's turn to to get some. I guess you would say.
Well, Reggie, as soon as they meet Alchemy, is like, hey, we've been out on the road a long time, man. I need to, like, I get lonely. I have needs, and of course he's immediately like, every chance he's getting, he's making faces at her, and he's like, hey, do this, do that, and she's all too willing, wants to get alone to basically, and it's actually a really funny scene, like the almost sex scene where she's just like obsessed with the bald part of his head, and she's just sort of like kissing it and stroking it and be like, bald head, I love it. And it's like, he's enjoying it at first, but then he's just kind of like, this is weird, what's going on? Like, he's got that look in his face.
She's pretty rough.
Yeah, if I'm going to make another complaint about the plot, I do think it's a little bit weird that the tall man just randomly appears outside the window and grabs Liz and kidnaps her. Like, that's literally how we end up getting into the final part of the movie. Now, admittedly, it does make a little bit of sense when you find out that Alchemy was him, because it sets up that he's already around, but it feels really random at the time, where it's just like, oh, just suddenly tall man.
I feel like that's his MO, though. It's just like grabbing people through windows.
Like I say, it's just, in terms of the plot, there's not a whole lot of like motivation for the next part. It doesn't keep like building upon itself. It just some things just kind of happen. But yeah, so it's
well, I'm sorry, but just if I was gonna have maybe like a small complaint, is that I don't know, it kind of feels like the tall man's just doing the same thing, like. I mean, I guess like the story isn't that much about him up to something new, but more about them getting revenge on him. But yeah, it just kind of feels like very like similar to the first movie. It's like, oh, I mean, he's still just basically stealing bodies and shrinking them down.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the point. It's just that's like I guess the complaint wouldn't be that he's not necessarily doing anything different. It's just that maybe this time when we get to him, his plans follow along, so we'd see something different about it. Like, we'd see maybe what he's doing on his planet. Because when we see his planet again, or his dimension, it just looks the same as it did the first time we saw it in the first movie. There's no like progression to it. I mean, it looks cool. Like, it's a really nice moment again. But
yeah, it's really cool looking. But I mean, all right, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if I missed something, but it felt like it was leading up to something with him and Liz and having this kind of like psychic connection or power. It seemed like the tall man wanted that for some reason, but I don't think they really explored that. They
didn't. I mean, I guess the only thing you can really deduct from the movie is that he feared them as being powerful, so he wanted to take them off the board, and maybe that's what it is. But I mean, maybe it should have been more than that, but that's all you can really glean from it.
Yeah, it just feels like there was something that, like I think at one point Liz says like oh, like he wants me or something, like, and I kind of felt like they had something special about them that he was going to use for something, and then doesn't really go into it. But small complaint though, because everything else is really enjoyable to watch, so it's a minor quibble.
So they tell Alchemy to go away, not in a bad way, just because this is dangerous, so you get as far away as possible. We're going to go and try and rescue Liz and fight the tall man. So it basically leads to this giant kind of like extended sequence of various action things going down. Like we say, they get into the White Room with the tuning fork gate, and we have all that, and flying inside it and trying to get out. Obviously, we have all the ball stuff. We have the silver ball, which actually the crematorium guy, the crematorium,
like the
what do you call what do you call someone who cremates people specifically? Is that just the?
I mean, I would think maybe like funeral director or something. I don't know if there's a specific name just for doing crematory stuff. It
seemed like that's all he was doing all movie was that, so that's why I kind of specifically wanted to name him after that. But whatever, that guy, he like the ball's coming after like our characters, and they like dodge out the way, and it gets this guy in the hand, and then he pulls it out. They actually take it off the hand, and he throws it to. That's how he ends up beating the tall man. Actually, is he throws the ball at his face, and then they pump him with the yellow juice that they put into the people to make them druids,
right?
And he just kind of like inflates. But the guy who gets his hand cut off, like, he actually gets the gold ball, which has like the side of it like becomes like a spinning blade and like burrows into your face. It's fun enough. It's fun at first, but what I really like is how it ends, because you see his face and it's like coming back out the front of his face, and there's just these little blade edges like sticking out of his cheeks. That was pretty
really
cool.
good stuff.
Yeah, it's a really good effect. I like that. I like that a lot. Meanwhile, you've got Reggie fighting the druids, and like, the best part, of course, is he's got this little chainsaw that he's really proud of, and then this bad guy with the gas mask just pulls out this giant ass chainsaw. It's like twice the size of his, and they have a duel, and then he uses his shotgun to like blow away the druids, and there's some fun stuff there. So all this action stuff, this is what makes the movie really work. Is all the action in the last like 20-30 minutes is solid, good fun. It's really good stuff. So the movie's a blast in that sense. It's just a bit messy from a pacing and structure point of view.
Yeah. The what it lacks, I guess, in story and creepiness, which was some of the stuff that I really liked about the first one, it makes up for in this kind of off the wall action stuff, which is just a lot of fun, like you said.
You like Reggie, you like Mike to a point. Liz is pretty likable. You like her too. She's a good addition, which is a shame that I think, from memory, I don't think she's around that much past this movie.
Yeah, I don't think so.
That's a real shame. They should have kept her around as a permanent addition, but hey ho. So they actually defeat the tall man. This is kind of the thing, that it's kind of a shame that they kind of kept going after this, because it's kind of a decent ending for the series.
Yeah.
Like they defeat the tall man, he's done, and obviously the final moment does the same thing as the first movie, where it's like a sort of got ya at the last minute. But barring that, they kind of defeat the tall man and it's all fine. They beat him with his own stuff. You think they've won, and then they grab the hearse, and it's actually Alchemy who shows up and is like, "Hey, get in!" And so Reggie goes in the front with her, and this is where we find out that she's really the tall man, because he pulls off her hair and she's like all like decomposing underneath, and like, oh crap. And then it looks like Reggie's died. I mean, we know he's not if you've seen the next movies, but Reggie's like against the window outside, and like, because the other character's in the back, and he's like just he's against the window and he's like spewing blood down the back window, and then he falls on the ground and he's just lying there. We know he's not dead, but that's how it looks at the end of the movie. And Mike just sort of leans into Liz and says, "Hey, it's okay, it's just a dream. We're going to wake up. We're going to wake up." And then the sliding door opens from the front, and the tall man turns around and says, "What was he? This is real." Or no, it's not. I think it's no, it's not. But whatever he says,
something.
Yeah. It's basically no, this is real, which is hard to believe from this series, because it plays with what is and isn't real all the time. So it's hard to even believe it at face value. But yeah, that's the end of the movie, and then the great theme music kicks in to take us out in the credits. So, no, that's Phantasm 2. So, like I say, it's a lot of fun. The back half of it is great. The characters are really good. It's just a little bit murky in its script and its pacing, and the story like maybe could do more. But the gory moments are great. There's so much about it I love, so it's hard to like complain too much. But there's definitely faults with it.
Yeah, I agree. It's like it's a pretty decent sequel. No, actually, I'd do better than that. I'd say it's a pretty good sequel. It's and it's really hard to compare to the first one, because I think the first one is so good and so like unique and everything, and and this is still it's not like this is like a cookie cutter movie or anything, but it definitely I think falls short a little bit from the first one, but makes up for it in some really cool, fun, actiony stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I think for all its faults, like I always have a blast watching it. It's just a bit murky in the first half, and you kind of wish maybe it did a few more things with the plot. But overall, like, it's still a lot of fun. So I guess with that said, Tim, we'll rate Phantasm 2. So what are you giving it?
Think, and I was kind of going between. I'm not going to do that. Sometimes that's like a little unfair, because it's almost like giving two scores. But I'm gonna give this an 8. I think still really good. Like you said, there are flaws. But I always have a blast, a big 4-barrel blast, and every time I watch it, brings a smile to my face.
I do have to admit, I'm going to be a little harsh here, but not super. It's not that different from your score, but just in the sense that my score for this has went down, I think, on this viewing. Now, I still like it a lot. I still what I love about it, I still love. but I think in this viewing I maybe noticed the flaws a little bit more than I have done traditionally. I think in the past I also gave it an 8, but I think I'm going to bump it down to a 7.5.
Yeah, but I think that's still fair.
Yeah. I still like it a lot. I still like the movie a lot, but its flaws are kind of hard to ignore watching it again, and I can kind of see where, okay, right, this is where I would fix things.
Yeah, I think for me this is a case of like, on a technical level, it is probably more like a 7 or a 7.5, but on an enjoyment level, it bumps it up a few scores for me. Just just because it's so much fun.
I can't,
and it helps that all that, like, I think it always helps too that when the best stuff is towards the end as well, because then once you're done watching it, that's the stuff you remember more.
Yeah, you go away feeling good because you liked all the stuff that you just got. Yeah. Hey ho. So I guess that wraps up another movie on Streams After Midnight. You can let us know what you think of Phantasm 2 in the comments below. You can like, subscribe, all that stuff. You can get us on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the show and support the channel, head over to patreon.com/mailfuzztv. You get access to the crypt, which everyone can see, the public can see. There'll be a link to that in the description below if you want to see what the crypt is, the list is, which is a list of movies that people on Patreon have submitted for us to do at some point, and every so often we'll pick one and do it. We're doing one soon, I promise. It's on the to-do list to pick one from the crypt. So that's good fun. And also you get to vote on an episode once per month as well, which is also where the crypt movies might end up. They might end up in the voting for 1 month on Patreon. But there you go. So you can do that. Obviously, there's an audio feed of the show as well if you want to check out that. Also be a link to that in the description. There we go. That's everything I need to plug. So thank you very much.
I'm just like imagining you like spoon feeding someone the show. Like you just have like a little spoon with the audio feed on it and just putting it in someone's mouth.
Hey, no, I mean, like, honestly, like, I mean, if you're donating to us on Patreon, it doesn't really matter. Whatever, you're already giving us more anyway. But if you're picking between the video and the audio feed, like, YouTube, gives you ads, which actually helps us more than the audio does. So, like, if that means something, I mean, unless you have ad block turned on, in which case you're helping us in no way, shape, or form. So go to patreon.com/mailfuzztv and give us some money there, so you don't have to feel guilty.
Yeah. Luckily, YouTube is very fair when it comes to dealing with ads.
They don't. No. Almost all of our streams episodes are not suitable for most advertisers. You still get some ads because I've still seen them pop up in some videos, but it's less than most videos. I don't know how it works, what the system is, but
to be fair, I don't think this show is suitable for anyone.
This show is suitable for everyone. Everyone.
You say so.
Except Tim's wife to be, because there's so much dirt on him from this show that she can never watch this. Otherwise, like, he'll be in so much trouble. But there you go. Poor woman. That's all I can say.
I just don't want to expose her to you in any way.
Whoa. I have to imagine, like, what life decisions must you have made in your life to say yes to Tim? That's all I wake up in a cold sweat thinking about it, Tim.
Oh, please. I'm a catch and you know it.
I know, Tim. You're cuddly. I know you're cuddly. Alright, guys, that is Streams After Midnight. We will see you next time for more horror movies. We always appreciate you checking the show out. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.